All right, guys, I'm dealing with a little bit of a voltage issue on the new Zada Tech 1.3-inch digital gauge screens that I installed in my 92 Coupe on the last episode of my YouTube channel. So what I got going on is the minute that I turn my key forward to the run position, the gauges turn on, they go through their little cycle, and then they show me whatever it is that I'm monitoring on each one of the individual screens in live format. The minute that I turn my key to the start position, go to start my car, the gauges trip out, they flip upside down, they freeze, they will even give me weird characters, and then they stay in that format once the car is running. Now, the way I see it, there are two solutions to this problem. One involves me and you and some hillbilly engineering and ingenuity. We're going to try and fix this ourselves. The other is non-hillbilly engineers. These are actual real smart engineers that are trying to solve this, believe it or not, on the other side of the world. Stick around to the end if you're interested in hearing that story, because it is very wild to me. It never ceases to amaze me just how small the Foxbody community is, and or how kind and willing to help that people are. Stick around to the end. I'll tell you about that story. Anyway, I'm going to show you how I think we can hillbilly this thing into working. And it involves a fancy little thing better known as a capacitor. Right, so here are the capacitors that I speak of. And if you've ever had any kind of electronic device pulled apart and you're looking at the computer board, chances are there's capacitors on it. Like take, for example, the ECUs in our cars. There's capacitors on that board. Or if you're an old stereo junkie like me, you've maybe seen some of the great big ones like the size of that water bottle measured in full farads. These little guys are measured in microfarads. But essentially what they do, and this is going to be a very crude explanation, but they add a buffer between your power source and whatever it is that you're trying to power. So for example, if your power source is 12.7 volts and all of a sudden it drops down to say 11, this capacitor will hold 12.7 volts for a period of time to power or hold that power that's going to your device. Now, that is actually how I thought to use these, is I'm like, okay, when my car is turned to the run position, these gauges function fine when they're seeing 12.7 volts. The minute that I start my car and the starter steals pretty much every last volt that battery has to start the car, these gauges are no longer happy. So they have goalposts that they like to operate in, let's say, right? And maybe it's somewhere between 10.5 to 12.5 volts. But the minute I go to start my car and the starter robs all that power, these gauges go, we're not working anymore. So I thought, let's try a capacitor in line. Now, there's another neat little side to this story in that I actually jumped on to ChatGPT. I don't even know what made me think of doing this, but I was like, I just want to kind of confirm with someone, and I didn't know who that I could do this with. So I thought, what the hell, I'll give ChatGPT a go. I started asking ChatGPT questions about what kind of capacitor I could run to solve my problem. Guys, it was wild. It starts asking me questions like, is this an AC circuit? Is this a DC circuit? How many volts? How many amps? On and on and on. And it actually told me to buy these little 2200 microfarad capacitors, and it will solve my problem. So we're going to see if ChatGPT is worth its salt today. We're going to wire one of these guys in line on my power and my ground side of my power feed for my gauges, and see if this solves the problem. Real quick, I got to give a shout out to this company, Fnirst. I believe I'm pronouncing that correctly, Fnirst. So they reached out and said, hey, we've got this fancy soldering iron and it heats up really, really fast in and amongst a whole bunch of other fancy things that it does. And that has always been my pet peeve with my soldering iron. I mean, it's a hand-me-down from probably my great-great-grandpa, you know, the thing's older than dust. And you know how it goes. You plug them in, you go for coffee, you come back, it's still not hot. Well, anyway, this thing claims to heat up really fast. So I said, hey, sure, you know, if you guys want to send it to me, I'll check it out or whatever. Well, folks, get a load of this, okay? I'm going to turn this thing on. Boom. It's at 360 degrees centigrade that fast, like literally ready to weld like that. it absolutely blows my mind. And, you know, you get this like USB-C cord, fancy deal, 100-watt plug-in deal. It is one heck of a unit that I cannot say enough good things about. And check this out, like just a fancy little tip for working with, right? So anyway, ever since I got it, it's like the only thing I use. It's very, very slick. And yeah, no more waiting around to solder wires. Just give you a quick look at this before I plug her all back in, and then we'll send some power through it and see if it works. Any of you electronic gurus out there, please don't judge me. Like I said at the start, we're doing hillbilly engineering, but fingers crossed, this should work. Okay, folks, she's back in, and it is the next day. I shut it down a little late last night, but let's see if my hillbilly engineering paid off. So far, so good. Survey says. No. Well, that's not good. Swing and a miss, I guess you could say. I did go into this thinking there's a 50-50 chance. I guess what we did prove is maybe ChatGPT. You can't blame it though, right? I mean, it's only dealing with the information that I give it. But we did give it a try. At least now we know that that doesn't work. So anyway, that leads me to solution number 2. And now, those of you that stuck around to the end, I think you're going to enjoy this story. So Mark, the gentleman that designed and sent me up that gauge mount for the idiot lights to mount these 1.3-inch screens in, he is having a similar freezing problem that I am. And I believe he has a friend that is also dealing with the same situation. So it's common, at least common, that there's 3 Foxes out there that are doing this. So both of us had reached out to Zada Tech to say, hey guys, here's what we're dealing with, whatever. And they came back with some solutions, but you know, they were gray at best. They did, however, say, you don't happen to know of a person that has a Foxbody in the UK, do you? So Mark reached out to me with this question, and I said, funny enough, I actually do. But at the same time, this is kind of like, say, me being down in Texas and running into somebody and they go, hey, I know a guy up in Canada, Jim. Like, how the hell am I supposed to know who Jim is, right? And it's a big country. So is the UK. Anyway, I thought, what the hell? I'll reach out to Chris Westwood, who is a gentleman that we had on the pod a year and a half ago at least. And Chris and I had him on because we found it quite interesting that he had a Foxbody over in the UK, and both of us were like, we don't know if they got sent there or if he's imported this or what the story was. It's a really good podcast. Rolling in my 5.0 pod. It's on Apple and Spotify if you want to go and listen to it. And anyway, I reached out to Chris and I said, listen, there's this company we're dealing with on these gauges. They're in the UK. They're in North Devon of the United Kingdom. I said, you don't happen to live anywhere near that, do you? I know it's a long shot, but he goes, funny enough, I live in East Devon. I'm like, get out. So anyway, he's about 50 miles from Zada Tech, and being the kind soul that he is going to load his car up. It's actually somewhat it's not tore down, but he is doing some work to it, as we all always are. He's going to glue it all together and get it over to Zada Tech so they can run some voltage testing on their gauges in his car and see if they can find a solution for us. So, like I said earlier, it's absolutely wild how amazing this Foxbody community is. And it doesn't matter where you are in the world. UK, Middle East, North America, doesn't matter. We're all wired the same and everybody's willing to help. And that one just melted me. I'm getting goosebumps just telling you that story. So anyway, not a lot to tell you in this video other than my solution didn't work and we do have more solutions coming. And I've had a lot of people reach out and say, hey, where can I get these gauges? Where can I get the mount? Well, Mark and I are working on something right now for the mounts anyway, where we think we could put these things up on like my website, for example. If you're interested in going down this road, I think you might want to wait until we get the bugs fixed here with the gauges. But anyway, there will be a solution coming soon, so stay tuned for that. Anyway, folks, this is Father's Day as I record this, and I've got my laptop sitting on the bench. I'm going to go out in my coupe and do some data logging so I can, between me and Matthew, hopefully work out some of the gremlins with this thing. And the last big gremlin, I guess, would be getting these gauges figured out, but that is in the works. So anyway, folks, I hope you enjoyed this content. It's definitely more along the lines of entertainment value than how to. But anyway, hope you enjoyed. And for all you dads out there, if you're watching this, it'll be after the fact of Father's Day, but congrats on being a dad. Keep doing your thing. Chin up, right? And yeah, thanks for watching, guys. I appreciate each and every one of you. I'll catch you in the comments. Take care. Bye for now.